All right, hello everyone. We will get started, but like I said, a few more classrooms will pop in. So like I said, today is obtaining a real ID, and I gave everyone handouts and with all the information and packets that you will need. So Jamie Romeo, I have allowed you to share the screen and the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, and thank you guys for having us briefly just talked about Real ID. I know there's been a lot of things that have changed, and so while mostly the timeline regarding Real ID has changed to give us a little bit more flexibility, the requirements have not. And we also know, getting access to some of this is still an issue. But the good news is that since the TSA and the federal government have extended the implementation date of this to May 3rd, 2023. Yep, that's correct. It's actually 2023. There's now a lot more time for everyone to get the documents they need together in order to either move up to a real ID or an enhanced driver's license. But it's still good to know what documents you may need, the difference between the different options for a state issued ID versus your passport, and eventually what that will be able to give you access to. But the good news is that we now still have until 2023. So some people thought it might be the end of this year. That's what we thought when we started, but the federal government decided to extend that a little bit. So I'm gonna share my screen, and I apologize, we just were updating this a little bit, but we'll be able to share this document as well. I'm just gonna see how easily I can do this. Okay. So I think you all should be able to see kind of this. Awesome. Oh, no, you don't need to see me there. Can you see me there? Yes. Yeah. So let me figure out how to take this back. Here we go. All right, apologize about that. Okay. So the biggest issue is the federal government, after the 9/11 Commission came out with new laws and requirements that said that they wanted to start issuing this federal standard of a type of way to issue standards for identification across the country. And they're working through different states to try to implement those same standards. So in New York State, that's how it's going to get implemented through our state ID programs through driver's licenses with either your regular state issued driver's license, which is what we all have now. That's the one where if you look up in that corner, and I apologize, I'm going to see if I can. Nope. Let's go to a different screen so you can all see what it is that we're looking at here. So if you all go to the licenses that you have, so these are ultimately what we're going to see right now. This one is what Minibus has right now. This is considered the state issued ID. So if you look up into it, depending on what it was issued, either it may say nothing or it'll say not for federal purposes. And that just means that this ID does not meet the standards of what the federal government is saying to prove to a higher level of degree that this is your identity. This is going to be what we move to in the future, is the differences between the real ID and the enhanced driver's license. So again, these are the requirements that in 2023, you will have to have one of these two in order to board a domestic flight. So there is a lot of time to get to that. You need a number of different documentation to assert your identity at this level. But if anybody sees the star up in their corner or the flag down here, that means they've probably already gone through that process. But this is how the quick way for law enforcement or border agencies and others will be able to determine that you've met that credential. The major difference here is the real ID is one that will allow you to board domestic flights and is considered approved for federal purposes as a verified form of identification. The enhanced driver's license is going to act in a very limited capacity, similar to a passport, where you will meet those federal requirements. You will be able to board domestic flights, but you'll also be able to cross the immediate southern and northern borders of the United States to either go into Canada or to go into Mexico. You won't be able to board an international flight without a regular passport. But that's one of the added benefits if you choose to go through that additional level of security that the EDL will provide for you. To just give you guys that brief visual. So, but this kind of comes down to what are the differences and how long will these things, how long will these licenses be issued for? So right now, they're all going to meet that same 8-year length of validity. So right now, for this column over here is what are the state's process is currently right now, which is that 8-year cycle that you've got to go through and renew your license. That will be the same regardless of the form of ID that you get. We know we have a number of questions about what makes the most sense in order to upgrade your license or to wait for a renewal period. So there's different options that individuals have. If you have a driver's license right now, you can choose to go in and renew it and upgrade it through that renewal process. But we know, particularly for the past 18 months, access to DMVs has been a little bit difficult because we have been out on appointment only, and the COVID required us to have to shut our doors. And this program is, unfortunately, it's completely in person. There's nothing that we can do online or try to expedite with this service because we are looking at documents and originals. So one of the things that we're encouraging folks to do is that if they do have a state issued ID or driver's license, they can renew it at any time to make sure they're always in good standing, as with the state of New York and law enforcement. But you can make an appointment to do a one-time upgrade, which is a less of a fee than doing a full-blown renewal with an upgrade because you're only upgrading that. So that is an option that you have. So then the other issue is just some of the costs that we know that people have. We have included some of the passport costs that some of you might be more aware of. The enhanced driver's license, there is an extra, and you do have the option to go through that upgrade if you would like to go through and get the enhanced driver's license as opposed to a real ID. If you'd like to have that going over the border, going to Canada a little bit easier than carrying a full-blown passport. So there is an additional fee. Obviously, these are all based on the state's original fees. So, but it is one of those that you will be paying a little bit more, but particularly if you're not doing a lot of travel internationally, the enhanced driver's license will be significantly cheaper than a passport. But good thing for everyone here that the clerk's office actually issues both of these. We do obviously are the motor vehicle agent for the state of New York, but we also are a passport agent. So individuals can come to our filing office to apply for passports, or obviously if you're going to the DMVs, you're able to access the services there. So we have just a little bit more information on some of the issues and costs. I'm not sure if there's any questions on some of this, because I think one of the biggest questions that people have, and this is usually a case-by-case basis, is what documents do I actually need? And depending on your status or what you have, that can really, that can always differ based on your individual circumstances. So that's one of the reasons why we also wanted to make you all aware of, and that's the link on the bottom of this that we'll also include in the chat too, goes to what the state has developed, which is this document guide. So the state DMV has really tried in the pandemic to provide a lot of extra tools in order to allow individuals to be able to visit a DMV and make that visit a little bit faster, particularly with this identification upgrade process, because we are asking for so many more additional documents. So this is definitely one where if you do want to go through a real ID, or if you would like to go through enhanced, we really encourage you to go through this step-by-step process where the state will walk you through specifically what are the documents that I need, what are the ones that I have. Hopefully this error doesn't occur when you go through it. That might be because we were on this page for too long. So if you go to the state DMV's federal real ID, and we're going to put that, we'll put that link in here too. You'll see what are the documents that I need. So let's just see. Okay. Yeah, so this is a very step-by-step process. And I know particularly the state DMV's website maybe doesn't have the best reputation, and I completely understand that, but this has become a really important, easy guide to try to help before you make it there to figure out what documents that I need, because we will completely admit, being an agent of the state, DMVs are set up in a very unique circumstance where if you need to call somebody, it's very difficult because you will often call and talk to a state worker, even though you're going to come to a local DMV and talk to a county worker. And there can be some miscommunications. And that's one of the reasons why working with agencies like OASIS or others, we really want individuals to know that they can go through this guide to figure out what it is that they need before they have that visit, so that hopefully they don't have to get a rain check issued and be able to and have to come back, because we really do want to be able to expedite this process and make it easier. So we definitely encourage folks to go through this. It can be very complicated because we understand based on individual circumstances, people have access to different documents or of different standings, perhaps with their own citizenship. And this is a tool that can really go down to that granular level of looking at what your needs are and what you have access to. For individuals that need birth certificates, Monroe County, if you were born in Monroe County, we have the Office of Public Health and Vital Records that you can go to that actually also has a website that we'll find and actually share. So that way, if you are a resident and were born in Monroe County, you can request a copy of a birth certificate online. It's a little bit more difficult because depending on where you were born, you might have to go back to that county government or other place in order to have something issued from there. But the state's document guide is a really good asset because we know that everybody, what they have access to is different. And we would always much prefer to be able to work with individuals or point them in the right direction if they have trouble obtaining, whether it's I need to go to Social Security, I need to go to a vital records office, or maybe it is I need to get a different form of documentation proving residency or photo ID from other places, because there are a number of different ways to make those points. And that's what this system built in from the state will get folks to. We also ask that particularly if you think you are going to be traveling, although now that they've extended this to 2023, it's a little bit easier. But if people are planning on making a day trip to Canada when they open the border, because I don't think they've opened the border yet. So we've got some time there also. But if individuals are trying to make their plans on, particularly when they need to have access to this, that we're really asking them to still time out their visits and make sure they're not running up too close into deadlines, because we know that this can be a complicated process, particularly trying to get access to documents. And we really don't want somebody showing up to a DMV, making an appointment, showing up to a DMV a week before they're going to travel and try to go, say, cross a border, and then a document is not there or they don't have what they need and now they're going to miss that deadline. So if anyone has for getting access to a DMV right now, if someone wants to make an appointment ahead, which for these type of transactions, we're really encouraging folks to, they can go to monroecountydmv.com. We also do have a portal there that people can send questions to some of our staff, but we really do want them to go through the document guide first, because that'll ultimately be some of what we send you to try to get some of that prep work done in advance. But we will be at later on this month opening up to walk-in appointments, but we are really encouraging these type of appointments because it takes a lot more time, and then we want to make sure that we're helping everyone be prepared when they get there, to try to make that plan to book an appointment maybe a couple weeks out, so that way they have given themselves that time to make sure they've got what they need, so that way they can get in and out in one visit and not necessarily have to keep coming back with us. Because this is a blend of a federal and a state process, we know that sometimes the state will have to require different levels of verification, say if somebody's of an immigrated status. So there is unique circumstances sometimes where somebody might come in and they might not be able to walk out because we do have to wait for the state government to come back to us on additional different clearances, which is another reason why going through that document guide from the state becomes a very good tool, just to help us understand if there might be different requirements or thresholds that have to get met, depending on our particular personal status. So I apologize because I feel like I've rambled on for quite a bit, and I'm not sure if anybody has any particular questions. Obviously, if anyone has specific questions, we can definitely try to work through that. But the good news is that while this is a new requirement and this is a new federalized standard, because they've delayed this to 2023, We do have now a lot of time comfortably to be able to get prepared for that ultimate change, which I think is good for everybody, particularly coming out of the pandemic as we continue to reopen.
And yes, people can speak up or type in the chat. But I had a question personally, and it's because I just simply don't remember. We have a lot of students here that will be getting their permits soon and then obviously their license. At any point, can you say you want the enhanced or real ID when you're getting your permit, or do you have to wait until you pass your driver's test and you have already gotten your license?
Yeah, you do have to wait until you get that full-blown license. So that's part of the way that the states work, is that it does work with the driving privilege once you've passed your test. And just so everyone here also knows, because this is kind of a new feature for Monroe County, if you're still getting started with that permitting process, we can now take the written exam online. So if anybody is getting ready to go through that process, you could actually go on the state's website and take that written portion of your exam, so you don't have to come and do it on a piece of paper in the DMV, and it would actually speed up that one process. But yes, these won't get upgraded onto permits. They do only get upgraded onto licenses.
Perfect, thank you.
Absolutely.
And again, anyone else that has questions, speak up or write it in the chat.
And we do encourage folks, we do have a portal. If they go to Monroe County, well, if you go to monroecounty.dmv.com, it shows you a button right to it. But we can also just go to monroecounty.gov/DMV contact. That's a place that you can enter questions to talk to us. There are the websites to call the state of New York if you're trying to call a call center because you really want to talk to somebody, but we've heard it's difficult sometimes getting through there. But we will definitely encourage folks, and I think ultimately what you'll get encouragement up to is to go through that document guide, and we really encourage folks to share that with their friends and family before they're going through that process as well. It's a really good tool to try to figure out all the things that they may need prior to coming in. And then the other good news is also if somebody has a passport and that's just their preferred mechanism of keeping those, if you for some reason decided you didn't really want to go to a real ID, if you've got your full passport, that will be accepted obviously on domestic flights. But we know that that's not necessarily a form of identification a lot of people carry normally, which is one of the reasons why they've tried to integrate this with the state ID programs across the state. But I will just double check. Oh, I've been corrected. I apologize. I've been corrected that actually, yes, permits can actually get upgraded on a permit status. So that's actually good to know. So that way you can go through when you're going through the permit process, but typically that'll be after your written exam before you get into the actual road test. So when you come in to make that appointment to take that written exam, whether you do it online or in person, that's where you would go through that upgrade function. So I apologize, but I thank Jackie for correcting me on that one. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions or anything. I apologize because this is kind of like a very stale, dry topic, but we know that it's very important because it is something that we all thought was going to come last October. Then we thought it was going to come this October, but it's good to know that we have a little bit more time because it can be complicated. And we also know that while we here in Monroe County are still trying to make processes a little bit faster in order to not have people have to visit a DMV and wait for a very long time before they get served. These appointments to do this transaction can still take a bit of time, but that's why the more homework that can be done ahead of time, the better it can definitely be to make sure that you come in, you've got everything you need, we're able to get everything done for you, and then you can be walking back out and getting to the rest of your lives for the rest of the day.
I did have another question, and it's only again because I can't remember, but I have my enhanced ID. But what are the rules for traveling? Is it by land, by water, by plane? Are there any restrictions for going to Canada or Mexico with that?
I believe it's only through the actual on land borders. I don't believe you can, oh, you can go through the sea? Okay. So that is one that for at least for Mexico and for Canada, then it would be all forms of travel. So that way you should be able to go through all forms of travel to those two immediate countries without having a full-blown passport. Anything else where you're going, not flying? Land or sea only. That doesn't make any sense why I would do that way. Okay. So we're going to scratch that. And we're going to start that over again. So apparently it's only land and sea, and it's not. So while you will be able to board a domestic flight, you will not be able to board a flight to go to Canada or to Mexico. You will be able to get on a boat or drive over, though. Those are the regulations that have been set down from the feds.
Perfect, thank you. And then, sorry, I can't have so many questions, but.
No, that's perfect. And as you can also see, I'm still rusty because we just have not been into this game for a while because the pandemic really threw us all for a loop.
Yeah, we all understand that. So a lot of the students here do not have their passport or will not have their passport for a few more years. So I wanted to have this to stress the importance of having the real ID. And I just kind of want you to reiterate and say, like, the benefits to it because they don't have their passport, and how it also helps with if you don't have a driver's license, but having the real ID is still a form of identification that is often needed, especially when dealing. I mean, it could be with anything. How many times do we ask for identification? A lot of our students do not have that.
Right. And that's where, especially moving forward, having the real ID, because we know that there's probably going to be other government programs and services, and particularly things from the federal government that they may start asking for a federal standard of a form of identification, which is this real ID, so just getting that basic standard, a non-driver's ID, potentially from the state, or a regular driver's license may work, but pretty soon you might find going to other agencies, they're going to start raising that standard, saying that they want this higher level because it's a different clearance where they're just doing a little bit more homework to verify individuals' identity. And particularly as we continue to see, online cybersecurity efforts, and we know identity theft is still a very big problem. That's one of the reasons why they're trying to set some higher standards to make it much harder for people to go and try to steal your ID, because they can't go through these minimum standards anymore to get forms of identification. They have to go through a lot more additional steps to try to make those things harder. In order to prevent identity theft, the only way that I'll really work is if more government agencies, companies, and others, in those instances that they might ask for ID, they're going to ask for this higher grade level of identification proof because they want to be able to continue to combat that. And that's one of the issues that obviously there were some national security issues that led to this, but that's another kind of issue that's kind of fallen out, I think, as a result of this, is that these higher standards of identity verification will allow, to a certain degree, us to try to combat identity theft a lot more. So while we know that there's a delay, we know that you can wait till 2023. I fully expect as we move pretty quickly into the future, you'll start seeing more and more areas where this is the type of standard where if you're really not going to get a passport, and I'll say for myself, I don't have a passport, but having this form of identification is going to be very important, particularly as we see that, because it'll be another issue where I think kind of similar to COVID right now, where we feel like things are changing and rules are changing very quickly before we expect it. This is another one of those areas where once it's been out there for several years and it's kind of accepted that should be the standard form of identification, we could start seeing that becoming very quickly, which is if you haven't gotten there, if you've been putting it off, you'll all of a sudden find yourself behind before you know it. And that's one of the areas why we've got time to get people prepared and get them in advance. We want to make sure we can walk you through that to get everybody prepared for the future.
Thank you. And I see that somebody said, how long will it take for a person to obtain their enhanced license, and how much is it? And where can they go to obtain their enhanced license ID?
So you have to go through a DMV. So we have 4 branches here in Monroe County. It goes through, we have one in Rochester right here on East Main Street. We have one in the Grease Ridge Mall, Henrietta, and Irondequoit. Right now you can make appointments online at monroecounty.gov. We do have some limited Saturday hours. We also have appointments every day from 8:30 to 4:30. The full fee, I want to say is I'm not going to say it because I'm going to be wrong. We're double checking the full amount of how much it does cost.
So it ranges from $64.25 to $67.50 if you're 21 and older.
Okay.
Plus $30.
So we're going to type it in the chat because there's a range, and it depends on the age of who's the issuant. So we know that you will get a form of, just like if you go to the state DMV, you get a temporary ID when you walk out. So that'll be one of the things that you will get immediately. But obviously, if you're waiting for the full card that has to get mailed from Albany, that's one of those processes, unfortunately, we don't necessarily control the timeline of. In the past, it usually would take about 2 weeks, I want to say, but we understand that the state has experienced some delays for following up on some processes because of just COVID and because of all the things that we currently have right now, which is one of the reasons why if someone's making some travel plans, we really would like to work with them in advance of their immediate plans if this is a form of identification you really need, because there are some of those timetables that are outside of our control here in Monroe County that we have to rely on the state on. But similarly with passports, one of the things I will say is that the passport office for Western New York out of Buffalo, we know we've seen some pretty significant delays, and they were closed for a very long time because of the COVID pandemic, which is another, whether you're looking at column A or column B, it's still going to take a little bit of time while retail and shops and businesses are starting to reopen. We know that there are still some backlogs that some of these larger government bureaucracies are working through. So we want to make sure that people are taking some planning measures in advance before they kind of hit into those rest areas where now we're making frantic calls trying to figure out how quick it will be to get these things in hand.
Thank you. And someone said, can I only come by appointment or can you do a walk-in when getting your enhanced ID?
So later this month, we will be taking in walk-ins. One of the things we're trying to avoid for anybody that's gone to the DMV before COVID was you have to take a half day off of work because you're going to go in, you're going to sit down and wait a couple hours and hopefully make it before the end of the day. We're trying to get individuals to utilize. We did have some appointments previously that not that many people had utilized. Then obviously with COVID and the governor's executive orders, we have to use appointments for a little while longer. We're encouraging folks to use those appointments because what we found was you might have to wait a couple weeks to get in with an appointment. But what we found is that you will be in and out probably within a half hour if you make those appointments in advance. And that's saves particularly your day a lot more time. And especially for these real IDs, we will be able to take a limited number of these in, but we really are encouraging folks as part of that planning process, utilize these tools from the state, make an appointment maybe a week or two before you need to get in. And then that way, once you get in and out, the time that you'll spend with us, not that we don't want to see you, but we also know you don't want to be there for a couple of hours. It'll be a much faster process than say what it has been in the past.
Thank you. And I know I can speak from personal experience. Again, it was a couple of years ago when they first made the rule of having to have your enhanced ID, but I used the website that you guys shared and it told me what documents I needed. I brought it all in and it was a very quick process. So even though it might take a little while to get in, the process is very simple and they know what they're doing so they can assist you.
No, absolutely. And that's why we really want to lean on people we want to make sure we're doing our homework before you come in, and it'll just make that so much faster and particularly have to avoid coming in and coming back.
I'm going to check to see if anyone has any more questions. Doesn't seem like there's any more questions. So I just wanted to thank you again so much. What form of ID should I bring with me? Assuming when you go to the DMV.
So that's one where there's several. And that's one of the reasons why we really need to go through to figure out to get to the total number of points that you need to. It may be a combination of social security cards, some other potentially maybe foreign-born documents, birth certificates. There's a lot of things but that's one of the reasons why we ask people to go through that document guide first to really look at your particular situation and your needs. How can you get to that total number of points that you will need before you get to your appointment? Because that might lead you to the question of, oh, I don't have this. Where do I need to go to get it? And that's one of the issues of where now through a law that was passed a few years ago, there are some foreign issued documents, birth certificates and different things that the state DMV will accept. but it's going through that process particular to your situation, that it'll tell you whether what you currently have is sufficient or if you need to go through any additional steps.
Perfect. That's kind of going on off of what you said, but we have a lot of international students. So there's always the possibility of not having documents or translation and other various reasons. But correct me if I'm wrong, you guys on that list, it offers other options if you don't have that and if you are an international student, correct?
Yes. Yes, and that's one of those, it will issue particularly for any foreign-based or foreign issue documents of what the state currently accepts. If you don't have them, what could be accepted. And that's another one where if you go through that and you still have questions, you can always send us those particular questions through our portal or calling the state, and we'll be able to work through individuals. I will say at all of our DMVs, we also do have access to Language Line, which is an online translation-based service that I want to say has a large number of languages that we can translate into. So that way, if anybody's going through the process and has any language concerns, we are able to utilize that. So you can speak with somebody that might speak your primary language in order for us to be able to help best serve you through this process too. And that's one of the nice things about the state's website is that you can go through that document guide, but if needed, you could use this. There's a translation tool right up in the top right corner of it. And let me see. No.
And I had a side question of my own again.
Yeah.
If you lose your license, what do you do? Do you have to purchase a new one? Do you pay lesser of a fee to get a replacement? How does that work?
It is lesser of a fee to replace it. Some IDs are issued online. So this is the translation tool for the document guide that individuals can see. But if we're just going to go back up here, we're going to continue to leave through this page. You can request a replacement document online. So there are a number of online transactions that you can do. And one of them is just replacing an ID or a license or a permit. But what this will do, and it does come for a reduced fee if you lose it, but this will actually go through the options of which of these ones we will reissue and some of them that we won't, because it is dependent on the type of one that it is, whether it will do it or if you need to make an appointment. But this is also one of these that for a lot of these online-based services, it requires you to sign up for this My DMV account. This is an actual pretty good tool to have once you've had an ID that's issued for you. It can help you link you to other government services, but also if you move, if you need to do an address change, there are a lot of things with your ID once it's been issued that if you have some of those online tools, which all of these are, if you don't necessarily have a computer, if you are using a phone a lot to get internet access, these tools are all mostly mobile friendly. Some of them are a little bit quirky, but this is another area that all of these websites and these links will work on your phone, because I know that a lot of times browsing the internet on a mobile device is the easiest way for some individuals that might not have computers at home. But this is a good way that people can use these to do some very simple things that could avoid them from having to make an appointment or wait in line or come down to a DMV office. To do some simple things like I've moved, I changed departments, I need to update some of these things after it's been issued. But for replacements, it will be that reduced fee, but it depends on what you currently have. If you lose, say you lost your standard New York license, but now that I lost it, I want to upgrade it, that you won't be able to do. If you lost an ID and you're like, oh, I think I want to take this opportunity to go through the upgrade, you'll need to make your appointment and go through that. So that way that won't be something you can do kind of quickly online. But there could be a lot of reasons why somebody wants to go through an upgrade. And when you do go through an upgrade, if you don't want to wait for renewal, that will be that upgrade fee. You're not necessarily going to have the full amount fee that you're going to have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just a reminder to everyone in the classrooms, I did give out handouts that have a list of all the documents that you would need. And it's almost like a checklist of I have this and this is what you need. So that's something to also prefer as a physical copy in addition to online.
Absolutely.
Any more questions? I don't think we have any more, but is it okay if people have questions to reach out to you guys?
Oh, absolutely. We have our online portal. People can also send questions to dmvcovid19@monroecounty.gov if they want to email us. There is the state hotline that is a little bit hit or miss. I think we are trying to ask people to use our form. They'll talk to a county worker, that we're a little bit easier, particularly if we know you're able to come visit one of us. But I will say, this is a state service. So whether you are in Monroe County, if you move to Ontario County or Erie County, or if someone moves to New York, this is the same process wherever you are in New York State. A DMV location is in whatever county you may be in, and these will all still be that same process. So regardless of where you are in New York, the websites that we've shown you, the fee structures, all of those things are the same. We're showing it through Monroe County because we work with the state to provide these services, but we know it's a little bit different in different parts of the states. But what the service actually is and these standards will be the same. It just might be a different face of who's providing it for you. But we hopefully, if you're in Monroe County, hopefully we'll see you at one of our DMVs and we'll be able to help you all through that process.
Thank you so much. This was incredibly informative. And like you said, the rules are changing soon. So get it sooner rather than later. That's what they told me when I was getting my new license. So I got right on that. Thank you so much. And as a reminder to everyone in the classrooms to reach out, I copied all the contact information, and we will have volunteers here on Monday and Thursdays to help assist students as well if they're a little bit unsure of the process.
Absolutely. And then obviously you've got our particular administration's contact that you're always able to contact us if you're running into any issues with any students.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Hopefully everybody has a great rest of your day and get out and enjoy some of the sunshine.
Yes, it's nice. Well, thank you and enjoy the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.